These are highlights of stories that recall what it was like to grow up during the years of the Great Depression. 10 men and women who attend Norfolk Adult Day Health Center shared their memories with us. Each recollection is a tiny glimpse, a small snapshot of everyday life as it was lived by millions of Americans more than 70 years ago. With the help of our participants, we captured each of their stories using 3 techniques: video recording of one-to-one interviews, written summaries of those interviews, and artistic interpretation of their memories using the expressive medium of collage. Anne grew up as an only child in Boston and remembers that during the Depression, her family didn't have much, but her parents kept her life normal, like they were doing all right, even if perhaps they really were not. She remembers her father talking about the banks closing.
I didn't have much to begin with, but I had a nice family.
Anne's father worked for the railroad. He left the house in Boston very early and went by train to New Hampshire and came home at night very tired.
Well, my father worked for the railroad. He'd get up early in the morning, he'd come home at night, very tired.
Her mother was a good cook, and a special treat for her was her good food.
But the families stick together. It was nice.
Ruth was born in 1922 in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, the 3rd youngest of 11 children, all boys except for herself and one sister.
I was the 3rd youngest.
Ruth's family was fortunate because her father always had a job. He maintained the buses and trolleys for the local transit company. She recalls that they had a big garden and her mother was a good cook. She was always canning produce from it.
They didn't have much, but no matter who came to the house, and was at that time, people would go around begging for food. That was a bad time.
Their house was on a hill, so they could see people coming from different directions.
And no matter who went around, they always stopped. There was plenty for anybody else.
Pauline was born in Palermo, Sicily in 1922 and came to the United States when she was 16.
That was the last ship that I could take coming up into this country. There was a lot of depression. There was a war going on, a big war.
Her mother was a dressmaker in New York City. Pauline also lived and worked in New York as a dressmaker.
Working in a big factory, dressmaker. I still love dresses.
Eventually, Pauline began attending night school to learn the language, continuing to work in the dress factory during the day.
A lot of people that come from a different country. There was no night school. Then they opened a night school.
Born in 1924, Lee had 4 sisters and 2 brothers. They all tended the family's large garden and helped with their chickens in Mattapan.
I was lucky because we had a farm. My mother preserved all the time, and we always had fresh vegetable that she preserved in the jar. She never went to the store to buy anything.
Her father died young after the first 3 children were born. Lee says that her stepfather worked for the WPA.
Well, at those times, there used to be the WPA. At that time, they had the welfare, too, and they used to give you clothing, and if they were too big, my mom would fix it.
Her parents never talked in front of the children about any of the hard times.
Well, we knew what was going on. A couple of them that didn't have much,
Even though the times were hard, 87-year-old Eileen says that her family was blessed and didn't go without during the Depression. Growing up on a farm in Vineland, New Jersey, she did not know they were poor.
We didn't know we were poor. We children didn't know.
When she was 5 or 6, her family moved to Philadelphia, where her father got a job doing mechanical things.
I think The Depression was bad for them, so I guess they had to give it up, or it wasn't bringing in that much money, and I moved to Philadelphia.
Dick was born in 1927, a native of Quincy, Massachusetts, and was a youngster during the Depression.
I was still a kid then.
He attended Quincy High School and served in World War II.
World War II, I was in it.
He saw many horrors and considers himself very lucky, especially compared to many others.
I unfortunately had to pick up a number of people who didn't make it. They were out there and they got bingo. It was sad days. Sorry, I talk about it, I get tears in my eyes.
Betty grew up in Roxbury during the Depression under difficult circumstances. Many of her still vivid memories from that time are not so happy, though.
Believe it or not, I can remember things then than what I did today. I remember my mom going and trying to get us milk. And a lot of times we had to eat gravy 3 times a day because she couldn't get the nourishment, and we didn't have the nourishment when we were children that we should have had.
Betty's mother died in childbirth at 24 when Betty was 5 and the next older sister was 6. Her grandmama died a month later. All the children were sent to an orphanage.
Mama was 24. My sister was 6. I was 5. And my mother died in childbirth. And then my grandmother died a month later. And us kids all ended up in the orphanage, Home for Catholic Children, that used to be in Boston, right across from the city hospital. And my sister was raised in the orphanage. But me and my 2 brothers, we was put out in foster homes. I don't recommend that for any child.
Angie recalls that during the Depression, she was one of the lucky ones. She was born in 1922 in Italy and came to the United States when she was 18.
For me, it wasn't a depression because I was too young, and I just came from the old country, Italy, Abruzzi, near Rome.
Her father had been in the States for a long time when he called for the family to come over. Angie's family bought some land in Walpole that was part of the agricultural school property. In the old country, they had kept animals.
We were the lucky ones. My father was in this country for a long time. He bought some land, and of course, we had animals in the old country. We had to get them here. We had sheep, we had chickens, so then we used to sell a lot of stuff.
They worked very hard, and Angie got her license so that she could drive the station wagon around to sell the dairy products.
Well, after I got my license, I used to drive around and sell eggs and so forth. Well, they had called my brother, who was a year and a half older than me. They called him to go in the service. Somebody had to drive him, so that's what kept us going.
Al's mother took care of their home and Al, his sister, and his brother.
Everyone was poor. My family still worked. So I didn't feel the effects.
Al's father was a furrier at a store on Newbury Street in Boston.
We didn't realize it.
Joe was a youngster in Dorchester and Boston during the Depression. He was born in 1933, so he remembers more of his parents talking about it than his experiences of what that time was like. It seemed to him that the entire country was affected and that almost everyone lost their jobs.
I brought up in the city of Boston. Everybody lost their jobs. And my father didn't know. He's a school teacher.
When he was little, someone stayed with Joe all the time. That used to make him angry because all the other boys got to go out by themselves. He later learned that he had epilepsy.
But all the other boys were running around playing by themselves, and I wanted to know why. I had to have somebody with me all the time. I could walk and get around, but I'm an epileptic.
His best memory is that his father took him everywhere he could. He remembers being about 7 and doing the weekly shopping with his father at the supermarket.
I did the weekly shopping with my father, who took me every place, every place he could take me.
His mother took care of Joe and his 4 brothers and 3 sisters.
My life is like, I was told, life is what you make it. My mother told me that.
This project, completed in 2013, has been supported in part by a grant from the Norwood Cultural Council, a local agency which is supported by the Mass Cultural Council, a state agency.